as we've mentioned, yes, there is more pain on the way. We think for those with a mortgage at least, we shouldn't forget those that have deposits in banks. They might be pleased that the latest rate hike we're expecting that will all kick off this afternoon. It's 9 in a row, and that's the big problem for households, the pace of these that have come, and for some, the shock of how much they'll be paying in their mortgage. Joining me now is Nationals Leader David Littleproud for more on this broad issue. Thanks very much for your time. So, look, I guess cost of living broadly, what are people telling you in your electorate about this specifically?
Yeah, it's the big three. It's interest rates, it's electricity, and it's the cost of food. And this government has an opportunity to do something particularly about electricity. You could put more gas supply in to reduce the prices, but they've done nothing. It's not like building a coal-fired power station. You can actually get new gas into the system, supply into the system relatively quickly, months, not years. And with food, they've basically dropped the ball. This isn't just about natural disasters. This is a man-made disaster. The NFF and COSBO said it takes 172,000 workers they need to get food from a paddock to your plate. The Labor Party, because of the AW, took away the ag visa. And we've been saying you're not going to get those workers unless you broaden beyond the Pacific. And the Pacific can only get 42,000. And with that, they're competing with healthcare, aged care, childcare. So you're not going to get the full 42,000. So farmers and even abattoirs are now working only at 60-odd% capacity. You don't go and plant a crop if you can't pull it off. And so if you reduce supply, prices go up. And despite Jim Chalmers wanting to change capitalism, there's pretty simple principles that have stood the test of time and will continue to stand the test of time around demand and supply. And this is just about making sure you make practical measures, not ideological ones, because the ideology doesn't match the practical reality.
There's a fair bit there. Why don't we focus on gas, though? I mean, it usually does take years, not months, and we didn't see more gas come on supply in the last couple of years under the coalition when the ACCC was warning.
No, with respect, there is. In fact, Senex, in my own electorate, if you understand my electorate, I actually have the Surat Basin. Senex was about to make $1 billion investment. 60 plus petajoules were coming into the system. And the thing is that there is the infrastructure already there to get it into a pipeline and get it south. There's some more work to actually increase that capacity, the physical constraint, particularly in winter. And we were making investments in that. But this government in the budget took away those spends to actually invest in the infrastructure and invest in more exploration.
But nothing came online during your time. You're saying, it just takes a few months.
Senex was about to drill, so it'll take months.
That's the point.
Yeah. No, exactly.
We had warnings about shortages for years,
but
and
government
doesn't
drill the holes, Tom. You actually have to send the investment signals to give those companies the confidence to go and invest. And that's what we've been able to do, is to give them the confidence, whether it be Senex, but it was also about the continuation of increasing, not just Senex. Santos, Origin were all still drilling holes in the Surat Basin, putting more capacity, and we're prepared to do that.
We've got the Resources Minister on soon, so we've been keen to talk about the supply issue as well as the other ones. What about the big one you mentioned there, interest rates? If you've got a mortgage, I mean, this is number one with a bullet, right? Are you worried about mortgage default in your area?
Yeah, look, I think since the Royal Commission, I think before that, the regulatory frameworks that the banks have been working on around affordability has been pretty strong.
But we're going beyond that stress test level already, and this is rate rises that have happened in a year.
Well, and this is where I think we need to be cognizant and alive to the fact that we need to work collaboratively with the banks to make sure that we have real live data on this. I think the banks have worked collaboratively in the past on this.
Does that mean that so that the banks can let the RBA know that they're all working together? They go, look, you've got your job, that's fine, we get the inflation issue, but we're this close to people really being pushed over. Is that what you're talking about?
Totally. They have real-time data around defaults. I used to work in a bank in agribusiness.
BOQ, I think it was.
No,
okay.
And Suncorp. But effectively, we were doing that through the drought. We were actually having real-time data, sitting down with the banks, making sure we knew the stress that was out there and the areas of particular stress. And so you can identify it to a geographical area.
Do you have confidence in the RBA that they're very cognizant of inflation, but they are cognizant of households getting pushed to the brink?
Yeah, I think this is where the balance needs to be sought by the RBA, and the speed and the velocity of what they are putting in place here and the increases. Understanding we came out of COVID and the government put a lot of money into the economy to get us through, and they had expenditure, disposable expenditure. But now retail sales are coming off. We need to understand that this is really biting.
So pause. That'd be your
I'm not going to give gratuitous advice because I'm not an economist, and I think we have to have faith in our institutions.
Okay.
And it's important.
You've got that faith still?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Look, they don't always get it right, and I think, obviously Philip Lowe's come under many attacks. Some of them have been warranted, but, I don't think he went in there with any malicious intent other than to try and do the right thing.
Just on the Voice, you're not supporting the Voice itself. What about referendum bills to go through Parliament? Will the Nats support them?
Well, we haven't seen the legislation, and what we'd really like to see is to make sure that the yes and no are able to have booklets sent out so that Australians can make an informed decision.
But you're not predisposed towards no on that question.
Well, that'll be the primacy of my party room determines those decisions, and when we get the bill and we'll look through it. But it's important that Australians are given the information and they can make this deeply personal decision themselves.
And if the referendum fails, would you be open to a Voice just being passed in Parliament separately?
Well, no, we fundamentally don't believe that this will actually close the gap. It's another layer of bureaucracy. There's no malicious intent.
But it could be done in any way. There's no sort of
Well, then the government should do it. Don't divide.
No, what I'm saying is, for example, there are people saying, what are the details? If they're fleshed out in a way that pleased other people, I thought that could help. You're not open to any...
We've been down this pathway before. We've had a representative body, and while it might work in Redfern, I can tell you in remote Australia it won't work. You actually need to listen to the entire community. The Prime Minister proved that when he went to Alice Springs. You just can't have one voice that comes and expresses. You need the entire community, because unless the entire community has buy-in, those programs that we roll out, they won't work, and that's why the bureaucracy...
And if the referendum did pass, would you support it then in Parliament legislation?
No, well, again, we'll have to see what they come up with the design, but we philosophically don't believe that this...
So you wouldn't listen to the Australian people on what they say in a
We'll accept
referendum?
the decision. That's the primacy of democracy.
But wouldn't that mean passing a Voice in Parliament?
Well, depending on the detail, because the detail of what the Voice will look like will come subsequent to that.
Okay.
So, obviously...
You'd treat it as a normal bit of legislation that
we'd have to have a look at it.
Seek amendment
again,
for,
my party room determines those, not an individual. There's no captain's call in the National Party.
You're the captain, though.
Yeah, I am, but I manage the team and give them the opportunity to have their voice heard and their views expressed as a party room. That's how the Nationals work. That's the different culture that we have, and that's what makes us a rich party of diversity. Those diversity of ideas means the Nats have always brought this common sense to Canberra.
Captain, we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, mate.